The living room fell into that kind of silence you only hear at funerals or car accidents. 30 people who had been chatting and laughing just moments before now sat frozen, their plastic forks halfway to their mouths, their conversations cut off mid-sentence. I stood in the doorway of my daughter's house, still holding the gift bags I'd spent weeks preparing, still wearing the smile I'd practiced in my car mirror. Mia pushed herself up from the cream-colored armchair where she'd been opening presents, her 7-month belly making the movement slow and deliberate. Her face wasn't angry or emotional. It was worse than that. It was cold, decided, like she'd been planning this moment for weeks. "Mom," she said, and her voice carried across the room with perfect clarity. "I need you to leave. You're not welcome here." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually took a step backward, bumping into the doorframe. Someone's coffee cup clinked against a saucer. A baby, somewhere in the room, started crying, as if sensing the tension. But mostly, there was just that terrible, crushing silence. I looked around the room at faces I'd known for years. Janet from down the street, who I'd carpooled with when our kids were little. My sister Carol, who was staring at her hands like she wanted to disappear. Jake's mother Cynthia, sitting in the place of honor next to the gift table, wearing an expression that somehow managed to look both satisfied and sympathetic at the same time. These were people who'd eaten at my kitchen table, who I'd driven to soccer games, who'd celebrated Mia's achievements with me over the years. Now they were watching me get publicly humiliated by my own daughter, and not one of them said a word in my defense. "Mia, sweetheart," I heard myself say, though my voice sounded strange and far away. "Did I do something wrong? I brought the gifts you mentioned, and I thought—" "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be," she interrupted, still standing, still pointing toward the door like I was some unwanted solicitor. "This is my day, and I need you to respect that." Her day, the baby shower I'd offered to host, the celebration I'd wanted to help plan, the granddaughter I'd been dreaming about since the moment Mia called to tell me she was pregnant. Apparently it was her day, and there was no room in it for the woman who'd given up everything to make sure she had days like this. I set the gift bags down on the small table by the door, my hands somehow steady, even though everything inside me was shaking. The hand-knitted yellow blanket I'd worked on every evening for 2 months, the organic cotton onesies I'd saved up to buy, the photo album filled with pictures of Mia as a baby, thinking she might want to share those memories with her own daughter someday. "I understand," I said quietly, though I didn't understand anything at all. "I hope you have a beautiful shower." I turned and walked back to my car, my spine straight and my head up, because whatever was happening here, I wasn't going to give these people the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. But as I sat in my Honda Civic, trying 3 times to get the key into the ignition because my hands were shaking so badly, I realized something that would change everything. The room went dead silent. 30 people I'd known for years just stared at me like I was a stranger. My own daughter, carrying my first grandchild, had just publicly humiliated me at her baby shower. But this story isn't about that moment. It's about what led to it, and how sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up teaching you the most about your own worth. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. For 16 years, it was just Mia and me against the world, and honestly, I thought we were winning. When her father packed his bags on a rainy Tuesday morning and told me he needed to find himself, Mia was 12 years old and still believed her daddy hung the moon. I watched her stand at the living room window for 3 hours that day, waiting for him to come back and explain why he was leaving us. That night, as I tucked her into bed with red, swollen eyes, I made her a promise that would shape the next decade and a half of our lives. "Baby girl," I whispered, smoothing her hair back from her tear-stained face, "you will never feel abandoned again. I will be everything you need, and more." And I meant it. God help me, I meant every word. I picked up a second job cleaning offices 3 nights a week. which meant I was working from 6 in the morning until 11 at night most days. But when Mia wanted to take dance classes like her friends, I found the money. When she needed a dress for homecoming, I worked overtime for 2 months to buy her the one she really wanted, not the one we could afford. When she got accepted to State University with partial scholarships, I took out loans I'm still paying off to cover the rest. Every sacrifice felt like an investment in something beautiful. Mia wasn't just surviving her father's abandonment. She was thriving despite it. She made honor roll, became captain of the dance team, got elected to student government. She grew into this confident, radiant young woman who could walk into any room and light it up with her smile. "Mom, you're my hero," she told me at her college graduation, tears streaming down both our faces as she accepted her marketing degree. "Everything I am is because of what you gave up for me." When she started dating Jake during her senior year, I was so happy to see her in love. He was everything her father wasn't: stable, reliable, from a good family with money and connections. When they got engaged, I spent my entire savings account on her dream wedding because seeing her walk down that aisle in the dress she'd pinned to her Pinterest board for 2 years was worth every penny I'd scraped together. The photos from that day still sit on my mantel. Mia in her flowing white gown, laughing at something Jake whispered in her ear. The two of us during the mother-daughter dance, both of us crying happy tears, me giving the toast where I told everyone how proud I was of the woman my little girl had become. "She's not just my daughter," I said that night, raising my champagne glass to the crowded reception hall. "She's my greatest achievement, my best friend, and the reason I know what unconditional love really means." The applause was thunderous. Mia hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, whispering, "I love you so much, Mom," into my ear over and over again. When she called me last March to tell me she was pregnant, I actually dropped the phone. Not from shock, but from pure joy. I was going to be a grandmother. After all those years of it being just the two of us, our little family was finally going to grow. "Mom, I'm scared," she admitted during that first conversation, her voice small and uncertain like when she was little. "What if I don't know how to be a good mother?" "Are you kidding me?" I laughed, wiping away tears of happiness. "Sweetheart, you had the best teacher in the world. You watched me figure it out as I went along, and look how amazing you turned out. This baby is so lucky to have you as a mom." I thought we were unbreakable. I thought our bond was the one thing in my life that would never let me down. I was wrong about everything. The call came on a sunny Thursday afternoon in May, about 3 months into Mia's pregnancy. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sketching out ideas for baby shower decorations in a notebook I'd bought specifically for grandma planning. Pink and yellow streamers, maybe some of those paper lanterns I'd seen on Pinterest. I was so excited, I'd already driven to 3 different craft stores looking for the perfect supplies. When Mia's name flashed on my phone screen, I answered before the first ring finished. "Hey, sweetheart, perfect timing. I was just planning some ideas for your baby shower. I was thinking we could have it here at the house. You know how much space we have in the backyard. I could string up lights in the oak tree like we did for your graduation party, and I found this amazing recipe for those little cucumber sandwiches you used to love when you were, Actually, Mom," Mia interrupted, and something in her tone made me stop mid-sentence. It wasn't rude exactly, but it was different, cooler than usual. "Jake's mother, Cynthia, is handling the shower planning." I blinked, staring at my notebook full of carefully drawn diagrams and color schemes. "Oh, I didn't realize you'd already asked someone else. I just assumed, since I threw your bridal shower and your college graduation party." "Well, Cynthia offered, and honestly, she has better connections for venues. You know how she is with event planning. She did Jake's sister's wedding at that gorgeous country club, and she knows all the best caterers in town." The words stung more than they should have. Better connections. Of course, Cynthia had better connections. Cynthia, with her pristine house in the gated community and her membership at the country club I couldn't afford to drive past, let alone join. Cynthia, who could throw parties that got written up in the society pages of the local newspaper. "Right," I said, trying to keep my voice light and supportive. "That makes sense. Well, Maybe I could help with decorations, or I could make some of the food. I love cooking for your friends, and thanks, Mom. But Cynthia's really got it all covered. She's already booked the venue and hired a caterer. She even found this amazing baker who specializes in baby shower cakes. I looked down at my notebook, at the sketches I'd spent hours perfecting, at the list of Mia's favorite foods I'd been planning to prepare with my own hands. Suddenly, it all seemed so small and amateur compared to hired caterers and professional bakers. Well, that's wonderful, I managed, closing the notebook slowly. I'm sure Cynthia will throw you a beautiful party. She has such good taste. She really does. Oh, and Mom? She mentioned that smaller guest lists are more intimate, so we're keeping it pretty exclusive. Just close family and a few friends. Close family. The phrase echoed in my head as we said our goodbyes. Was I not close family? I was the woman who'd held Mia's head while she threw up with morning sickness during her first trimester. I was the one she'd called crying at midnight when she couldn't stop worrying about whether she'd be a good mother. But apparently, I wasn't the right kind of close family for Cynthia's intimate gathering. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at that closed notebook. A tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered something I didn't want to hear. When did you become not good enough? But I pushed that voice away, like I'd learned to push away all the uncomfortable thoughts over the years. Mia was pregnant and overwhelmed. Cynthia was just being helpful. This was about what was best for my daughter, not about my hurt feelings. I told myself it was just pregnancy hormones making Mia seem distant. I told myself it was generous of Cynthia to take on such a big project. I told myself everything except the truth, that I'd just been politely but firmly pushed out of one of the most important celebrations of my grandchild's life. I should have listened to that little voice. Retry. It started happening in slow motion, like watching a sandcastle get eaten away by the tide. Each wave seemed harmless by itself, but before I knew it, everything I thought was solid had simply disappeared. 2 weeks after the baby shower conversation, I was scrolling through Facebook during my lunch break when I saw it. A photo of Mia and Cynthia at a baby boutique, both of them beaming as they held up tiny outfits. The caption read, "So grateful to have the world's best mother-in-law helping me prepare for baby girl. Cynthia knows exactly what every new mom needs. #blessed with the best #baby prep." I stared at that photo for so long my salad got warm. When had they gone shopping? Why hadn't Mia mentioned it? I'd offered to go baby shopping with her a dozen times, but she always said she wasn't ready yet, that she wanted to wait until after the shower to see what she needed. Apparently, she just wanted to wait until she could go with the right person. The comments under the photo made it worse. "Cynthia is such a treasure. Lucky you to have such a wonderful mother-in-law. Can't wait to see what Grandma Cynthia picks out." Grandma Cynthia. Not Grandma Diane. Just Grandma Cynthia. Like she was the only grandmother this baby would ever have. I called Mia that night, trying to sound casual. "Hey, sweetheart. Saw your shopping trip photos. Looked like you found some cute things." "Oh yeah, Cynthia wanted to get a head start on the nursery essentials. She has such an eye for quality. She found this incredible organic cotton bedding set that matches the theme perfectly." "What theme?" I asked, realizing I didn't even know how my own granddaughter's nursery was being decorated. "Woodland creatures. Foxes and deer and little rabbits." Cynthia thought it would be gender neutral, but still feminine. She's been researching child development, and apparently, natural themes are better for brain development than cartoon characters. Of course, Cynthia had been researching child development. Of course, she had opinions about what was better for my granddaughter's brain. And of course, Mia was hanging on every word like Cynthia had invented motherhood. "That sounds lovely," I said. "Maybe next weekend I could come see the nursery? I'd love to help put things together." "Actually, Mom, we're trying to keep the nursery reveal as a surprise until it's completely finished. But I'll definitely show you pictures once everything's done." Pictures. I was going to see my granddaughter's nursery in pictures. like I was some distant relative instead of the woman who'd painted Mia's nursery by hand 28 years ago, staying up until 3 in the morning to finish the border of dancing bears because I wanted everything to be perfect. The erosion continued in small, devastating ways. I'd text Mia asking how she was feeling, and she'd respond hours later with short answers. Fine, thanks. Tired but good. Doctor says everything looks normal. When I'd try to follow up with questions or offer to bring her dinner, the responses would get even shorter. Thanks, but we're good. Cynthia made a casserole. Jake's handling everything. I learned about her 20-week ultrasound from Jake's Instagram story. A video of the sonogram with the caption, "Our little girl is perfect. Can't wait to meet you, baby." I watched that grainy black and white video of my granddaughter moving around, waving her tiny hands, and realized I was seeing her for the first time through social media instead of being there to hold Mia's hand during the appointment. When I called to ask about it, Mia sounded surprised that I was upset. "Oh, I thought Jake had told you about the appointment. It was really early in the morning and I didn't want to bother you. Besides, Cynthia was already coming with us. She wanted to be there for the big reveal." I hung up that night and sat in my living room, surrounded by all the baby books I'd been collecting, all the little outfits I'd been secretly buying, all the preparations I'd been making for a grandchild I was apparently not supposed to be preparing for. The woman who used to call me first with every piece of news was now calling me last, if at all. The dinner invitation came from Jake, not Mia, which should have been my first warning sign. "Mom wants to have both families over for dinner," he said when he called. "You know, get everyone together before the baby comes." I should have said no. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was a setup. But I'd been raised to be polite, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to never assume malicious intent when simple thoughtlessness might explain someone's behavior. Besides, it had been 3 weeks since I'd seen Mia in person, and I missed her desperately. Cynthia and Robert's house was everything mine wasn't. Sprawling, pristine, with a circular driveway that made my 12-year-old Honda look like an abandoned shopping cart. The dining room could have seated 20 people comfortably, with a chandelier that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Mia hugged me when I arrived, but it felt different. Performative, like she was putting on a show for everyone watching rather than actually being happy to see me. She looked beautiful, glowing with that pregnancy radiance everyone talks about, wearing a flowing dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "You look wonderful, sweetheart," I told her, meaning it. "Thanks, Mom. Cynthia took me shopping at that boutique downtown. She has such amazing taste." Of course she did. Dinner conversation flowed easily at first. Robert told stories about his latest golf tournament. Jake talked about the promotion he was hoping for at work. I shared some funny stories from the hospital where I worked, and everyone laughed politely. For a moment, I started to relax, thinking maybe I'd been imagining the tension. Then Cynthia set down her wine glass and smiled that particular smile that wealthy women perfect, the one that looks warm but feels like ice. "You know, Diane," she said, her voice carrying that tone people use when they're about to say something they think is profound. "I've been reading so much about modern grandparenting lately. It's fascinating how different things are now from when we were raising our children." "Oh?" I said, taking a sip of water and trying to seem interested rather than defensive. "Well, for instance, there's so much research now about the importance of new parents establishing their independence right from the start. Some grandmothers, and I'm sure they mean well, can be a bit overwhelming in their eagerness to help." The table went quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, and suddenly I understood exactly what was happening. This wasn't a friendly family dinner. This was an intervention. "I think," Cynthia continued, cutting her roast with surgical precision, "that the most loving thing a grandmother can do is step back and let the new parents find their own way. Too much involvement, too many opinions, too much, what's the word I'm looking for? Hovering? It can really undermine a new mother's confidence." My face felt hot. Jake was staring at his plate like it might contain the secrets of the universe. Robert was nodding thoughtfully, as if Cynthia had just shared some revolutionary wisdom. And Mia, my daughter, my baby girl, the person I'd sacrificed everything for, was looking directly at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Agreement. Exactly, Mia said, her voice clear and decisive. Jake and I have talked about this a lot. We really want to do this our way, without too much outside interference. The word interference hit me like a slap. Interference. That's what my love had become. That's what 16 years of single motherhood, of working 2 jobs, of giving up every dream I'd ever had for myself, had been reduced to. I hope I haven't been interfering, I managed to say, my voice smaller than I intended. I just want to support you both. Of course, Mom, Mia said, reaching across the table to pat my hand like I was an elderly relative who needed reassurance. But maybe just let us come to you when we need something, instead of always offering. Always offering. Like offering to help was a character flaw instead of an expression of love. I excused myself to use the bathroom and stood in their marble-appointed powder room, staring at my reflection and wondering when loving my child had become something I needed to apologize for. The baby shower invitation arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday, 3 days before the event. Not hand-delivered like I might have expected for such an important occasion, not even texted or called about. Just a formal cream-colored card with elegant script that read, "Please join us in celebrating baby girl Morrison," with a date, time, and address I recognized as the country club where Cynthia held all her social events. My name was written in different handwriting at the bottom, like an afterthought. Like someone had said, "Oh, shouldn't we invite Diane too?" And Cynthia had grudgingly added me to the list at the last minute, 3 days' notice for my own granddaughter's baby shower. I spent those 3 days in a state of anxious preparation that bordered on obsession. I wanted everything to be perfect. Wanted to prove that even if I couldn't throw the kind of elaborate party Cynthia could afford, I could still show up with thoughtful, meaningful gifts that demonstrated how much I loved my daughter and granddaughter. The hand-knitted yellow blanket had taken me 2 months to complete, working on it every evening after my shift at the hospital. Soft merino wool in a pattern my own mother had taught me, tiny cable knots that would hold up through countless washings. I'd started it the day Mia told me she was pregnant, imagining my granddaughter wrapped in something made with my own hands, something that carried my love in every stitch. The organic cotton onesies had required 3 trips to different stores and 2 weeks of saving to afford, but they were the brand Mia had mentioned wanting. The little books were classics I'd read to Mia when she was small. Goodnight Moon, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Love You Forever, with inscriptions I'd written in each one about how excited I was to read them to another little girl. The photo album was my masterpiece. Hours spent selecting and printing pictures of Mia as a baby, as a toddler, through every stage of her childhood. Pictures of us baking cookies, opening Christmas presents, at her dance recitals and graduation. I'd written captions under each photo, little stories about what Mia was like at each age, thinking my daughter might want to share these memories with her own daughter someday. I dressed carefully that Saturday afternoon, choosing a blue dress I'd bought for Mia's college graduation, the nicest thing I owned. I practiced my smile in the rearview mirror as I drove to the country club, rehearsing what I'd say when people asked about my gifts, how I'd graciously deflect any comments about not being involved in the planning. The country club was exactly what I'd expected. All white columns and perfectly manicured gardens. The kind of place where my Honda looked embarrassingly out of place in the valet parking area. I carried my gift bags through the marble-floored lobby, following signs that led to the Magnolia Room. I could hear laughter and conversation before I even reached the doorway. When I stepped inside, the scene was like something from a magazine. Elegant floral arrangements on every table, a beautiful backdrop for photos, gifts displayed on white linen that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. 30 women in designer dresses, sipping champagne and eating delicate finger foods from china plates. Mia was seated in a throne-like chair decorated with white and gold ribbons, radiant in a flowing maternity dress that I'd never seen before. She was laughing at something Cynthia had whispered in her ear, her hand resting on her rounded belly, looking every inch the glowing mother-to-be. She looked up when I walked in, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance. But then she was standing, slowly and deliberately, using the arms of the chair to push herself up. The room went quiet. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Every eye in the room turned toward me, and I realized with growing horror that I wasn't just late to this party. I wasn't welcome at all. "Mom," Mia said, her voice carrying clearly across the sudden silence, "I need you to leave. You're not welcome here." I made it exactly 4 blocks from the country club before I had to pull over. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't keep the steering wheel steady, and the tears I'd been holding back since I walked out of that room were blurring my vision so badly I couldn't see the road. I sat in the parking lot of a CVS pharmacy, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality, and tried to understand what had just happened. My daughter, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep every night for years, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who called me her hero at her college graduation, had just publicly humiliated me in front of 30 people. The worst part wasn't even the rejection itself. It was the way she'd done it. So calm, so composed, like she'd been planning it. Like she'd spent the last 3 days knowing I would show up and knowing she was going to send me away. When I finally made it home, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I couldn't imagine facing my coworkers, pretending everything was normal, answering their inevitable questions about how the baby shower had gone. Oh, it was lovely, I would have to say. My daughter looked beautiful. How do you explain to people that your own child has erased you from her life? The house felt different that first week. Too quiet, too empty, too full of reminders of what I'd lost. I'd walk past the spare bedroom I'd been secretly preparing as a nursery for when Mia brought the baby to visit and feel physically sick. The rocking chair I'd bought at a garage sale and lovingly refinished. The mobile I'd hung from the ceiling with little dancing animals. The changing table stocked with diapers and wipes and all the things I thought I'd need for babysitting. It was all so pathetically hopeful. I stopped cooking real meals because what was the point of making food for one person? I lived on crackers and canned soup, sometimes forgetting to eat entirely until my stomach cramping reminded me. I stopped answering calls from friends who wanted to know how I was doing, how the pregnancy was progressing, whether I was excited about becoming a grandmother. How do you tell people that you're not going to be a grandmother? Not in any way that matters. The silence from Mia was deafening. Not a call to explain, not a text to apologize, not even an acknowledgement that what had happened at the baby shower was anything other than perfectly normal. I kept checking my phone obsessively, hoping for some sign that my daughter remembered I existed, that she felt even a tiny bit bad about what she'd done. Nothing. 3 weeks after the shower, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw the photos that broke what was left of my heart. Mia and Cynthia at Giuseppe's, the fancy Italian restaurant downtown, both of them glowing as they shared what looked like a celebration dinner. Mia was wearing a new maternity dress, something flowing and expensive looking. Cynthia had her arm around my daughter's shoulders like they were old friends. The caption read, "Celebrating 30 weeks with my second mom. So grateful to have Cynthia guiding me through this journey. She knows exactly what every expectant mother needs to hear." Blessed beyond measure. Second mom. Pregnancy journey. Second mom. Not grandmother, not mother-in-law. Second mom. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned, trying to understand when I'd been replaced so completely. When had Cynthia become the maternal figure in my daughter's life? When had I become so unnecessary that I could be publicly rejected and it didn't even cause a ripple in Mia's world? That night, I sat in my living room surrounded by 28 years of Mother's Day cards, birthday cards, thank you notes, and graduation photos. All those years when Mia told me I was her hero, her best friend, her everything. All those promises that she'd never forget what I'd sacrificed for her. All of it felt like lies now. I'd lost my daughter, and I didn't even know why. The cardboard box had been sitting in my closet for years, pushed far back behind winter coats and forgotten about until I decided to clean house. 4 weeks after the baby shower humiliation, I was going through everything with the ruthless efficiency of someone who'd lost all attachment to material things. If Mia didn't want me in her life, maybe it was time to stop living like I was expecting her to come home again. I pulled the box out and recognized it immediately. It was full of things from Mia's college years that she'd left behind when she moved in with Jake. Old textbooks, photo albums, a jewelry box that played Für Elise when you opened it. I was going to pack it all up and drop it off at her house, one final gesture of letting go. That's when I found the letters. They were tied together with a pink ribbon, about a dozen envelopes with my name written in Mia's careful handwriting. Letters she'd sent me during her freshman year when she was homesick, during her study abroad semester in London, after particularly hard exams when she needed encouragement. I'd saved everyone, the way mothers do, thinking someday we'd look through them together and laugh about how dramatic college had seemed. I almost put them back without reading them. What was the point of torturing myself with memories of when my daughter actually loved me? But something made me untie that ribbon, made me open the letter on top. It was dated 3 years ago, right after her college graduation. Dear Mom, I know I don't say this enough, but I need you to know something. Tonight, at dinner, when Mrs. Patterson asked me about my plans after graduation, I started talking about my marketing job and my apartment with Jake, and I could see her thinking about how put together I am, how confident and ready for the world. But what she doesn't know, what most people don't know, is that none of this would exist without you. Every single good thing in my life exists because you decided that I mattered more than your own comfort, your own dreams, your own everything. Do you remember when I was 15 and I wanted to quit dance because Emma Morrison's mom made that comment about how some families prioritize differently? You sat me down and told me that we weren't going to let other people's opinions decide what I deserved. Then you picked up that second job at the cleaning company so I could keep taking lessons. I knew you were exhausted. I knew you were working until midnight every day. I knew you were giving up things you wanted so I could have things I wanted. And I was too selfish then to understand what that really meant. I understand now, Mom. I understand that when other mothers were getting manicures and going out with friends and having lives of their own, you were investing every piece of yourself in making sure I never felt the absence of Dad. You filled that hole so completely that I never even realized it existed until I got older and saw how some of my friends struggled with their divorced parents. You are my hero, Mom. Not in some small, obligatory way that daughters are supposed to say. You are genuinely the strongest, most selfless, most loving person I know. Everything I am, my confidence, my work ethic, my ability to love Jake the way I do, it all comes from watching you show me what unconditional love looks like. I promise you this. When I have children someday, I will make sure they know how incredible their grandmother is. I will never let anyone make you feel less than the amazing woman you are. I will protect your place in our family the same way you protected mine in your heart all these years. You didn't just raise me, Mom. You saved me, and I will never, ever forget that. All my love, Mia P.S. I framed the photo of us from graduation and put it on my nightstand. Jake asked why, and I told him it's because I want to wake up every morning remembering what real love looks like. I read that letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face, before I could even process what it meant. This wasn't the woman who had rejected me at the baby shower. This wasn't the daughter who had replaced me with Cynthia and called her a second mom. This was my real daughter, the one who understood what we'd built together, who valued what I'd given her. The woman who had humiliated me at that baby shower wasn't the real Mia. She was someone trying so desperately to fit into Jake's family that she'd forgotten her own. I sat on my bedroom floor for hours that night, surrounded by letters that told the story of a daughter who had loved me deeply, completely, without reservation. The contrast between the woman who had written these words and the woman who had publicly rejected me was so stark it felt like reading about 2 different people. But they weren't different people. They were the same person at different points in her life, before and after she became desperate to belong somewhere else. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Mia hadn't stopped loving me. She'd just gotten scared that loving me would cost her something she wanted more. I thought about the dinner at Cynthia's house, the way Mia had nodded along when her mother-in-law talked about overwhelming grandmothers, the way she'd agreed that new parents needed to establish independence from too much interference. She hadn't been stating her own beliefs. She'd been auditioning for acceptance. My daughter, the confident woman who had once told me I was her hero, had gotten so caught up in trying to prove she belonged in Jake's family that she'd thrown away the family she already had. And I'd let her. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than devastation. I felt clarity. This wasn't about me failing as a mother. This wasn't about me being too much or too needy or too overwhelming. This was about Mia being 28 years old and still trying to win approval from people who should have been grateful to have her in their lives. I stood up, brushed the dust off my jeans, and walked to my desk. If Mia could write letters that told the truth about our relationship, so could I. My darling Mia, I found your letters today, and I need you to know that reading them reminded me of something important. I didn't raise you to be cruel. I didn't raise you to throw away the people who love you when they become inconvenient. I raised you to be better than that. I don't know what happened to the woman who wrote these beautiful words about protecting my place in your family. I don't know when you decided that having me as a mother was something you needed to apologize for or minimize, but I know this. The daughter who promised to never let anyone make me feel less than I am has been doing exactly that for months. I'm not writing this to guilt you or to demand an apology. I'm writing this because I love you too much to let you continue believing that love is something you have to ration, that you can only belong in one place if you reject another. You don't have to choose between loving me and loving Jake's family. You don't have to prove your independence by pushing away the person who taught you how to be independent in the first place. You don't have to earn your place in your own family by giving up your place in mine. But I also can't keep watching you treat me like I'm an embarrassment or an obligation. I can't keep accepting crumbs of affection when I taught you that you deserved the whole meal. I raised you to know your worth, and somewhere along the way, I forgot to insist on my own. So I'm stepping back, not because I love you less, but because I love you too much to let you continue treating our relationship like it's disposable. When you remember who you really are, not who you think you need to be to fit in somewhere else, I'll be here. The woman who wrote those letters I found today, she's still in there somewhere, and when she's ready to come back, she knows where to find me. All my love, always, Mom. I didn't send the letter, not yet. Instead, I folded it carefully and put it in my purse, a reminder of what I wanted to say when the time was right. For the first time since the baby shower, I looked in the mirror and didn't see a rejected mother. I saw a woman who had loved her daughter well enough to teach her how to love, and who was strong enough to wait until that daughter remembered the lesson. I wasn't going to chase Mia anymore. I wasn't going to beg for my place in her life. I wasn't going to accept being treated as less than I was. I was going to show her what unconditional love actually looked like. Love that doesn't enable bad behavior. Love that respects itself enough to demand respect in return. I was going to love her by refusing to let her treat me poorly. The hardest part about changing your life isn't making the decision to change. It's not announcing your intentions or explaining your reasons to anyone who'll listen. The hardest part is the quiet daily work of actually becoming someone different when no one is watching. I didn't call Mia to tell her I was stepping back from our relationship. I didn't send the letter I'd written, though I kept it in my purse like a talisman. I didn't post cryptic messages on social media or complain to mutual friends about how I'd been treated. I simply stopped texting first, stopped calling to check on her, stopped offering help that wasn't wanted, stopped making myself available for the crumbs of attention she'd been throwing my way. The silence felt strange at first, like holding my breath underwater. My fingers would hover over my phone dozens of times a day, muscle memory wanting to send her a "thinking of you" text or a link to an article about pregnancy. But I made myself put the phone down. I made myself sit with the discomfort of not knowing how she was feeling, what she was doing, whether she was okay. Instead, I started filling the space that had been consumed by worry about Mia with things that had nothing to do with being her mother. I enrolled in a watercolor painting class at the community college, something I'd wanted to do for years, but had always pushed aside for more practical concerns. Turns out, I had a natural eye for color and composition. The instructor, a kind woman named Patricia, who was about my age, encouraged me to paint bigger, bolder, to trust my instincts instead of second-guessing every brushstroke. "You paint like someone who's been holding back for years," she told me after class one evening. "What happens if you stop asking permission and just create what you want to create?" I started volunteering at New Beginnings, a pregnancy resource center downtown. 2 mornings a week, I helped other women navigate the overwhelming world of new motherhood, teaching them how to burp a baby, helping them understand different crying patterns, sharing the practical wisdom I'd gained from raising Mia. These young mothers looked at me like I was an expert, like my experience was valuable, like I had something worth offering. It felt good to be needed in a healthy way, to share my knowledge without having to apologize for having it. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during the years when my entire social life revolved around Mia's activities. Janet from work, who I'd had lunch with maybe twice in the past 5 years. Sarah from my old neighborhood, who'd been trying to get me to join her book club for ages. Linda from my painting class, who invited me to gallery openings and wine tastings and all sorts of events I'd never thought I was interesting enough to attend. "You're different," Janet observed over coffee one afternoon. "More present, like you're actually here instead of thinking about being somewhere else." She was right. For the first time in decades, I wasn't mentally composing text messages to Mia while I was having conversations with other people. I wasn't cutting conversations short because I might miss her call. I wasn't living my life in the spaces between my daughter's needs. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who helped me understand the difference between loving someone and losing yourself in them. "You taught your daughter that love means sacrifice," she said during one of our sessions. "But did you ever teach her that love also means respect?" The question haunted me. I'd been so focused on showing Mia unconditional love that I'd never required her to show me basic consideration in return. I'd modeled endless giving without ever demonstrating that healthy relationships require reciprocity. 3 months into my new life, I realized something that should have been obvious. I was happy. Not completely, not without the ache of missing my daughter, but genuinely content in a way I hadn't been in years. I was remembering who Diane was when she wasn't just Mia's mother, and apparently, Diane was pretty interesting. The first crack in Mia's carefully constructed new world came, ironically, from social media. I'd stopped following her accounts obsessively, part of my commitment to stepping back, but Janet mentioned something at lunch that made me curious. "Have you seen Mia's baby posts lately? People are asking some interesting questions in the comments." When I finally looked, I understood what she meant. Mia's latest photo showed her at 32 weeks pregnant, glowing in yet another expensive maternity dress, standing in the nursery with Cynthia. The caption read, "Grandma Cynthia helped me organize all the baby clothes by size. So grateful for her wisdom and experience. Blessed with the best. Grandma love." But the comments weren't the usual chorus of congratulations. Instead, there were questions. Lots of them. "Where's your mom in all these posts? I remember seeing her at your wedding." "Doesn't your daughter have another grandmother? Haven't seen her mentioned lately." "My mother-in-law is great, but there's nothing like your own mom when you're having a baby. Is your mom excited?" "Girl, where is your mama? You know she's probably dying to help with her first grandbaby." Mia had responded to a few with vague answers like, "She's very supportive," and "We're so lucky to have lots of love around us." But I could read between the lines. She was uncomfortable with the questions, unsure how to explain my absence without admitting what she'd done. The shift became more obvious over the following weeks. Mutual friends started reaching out to me, casual conversations that revealed how Mia's new dynamic was being perceived by people who'd known us for years. "Carol mentioned that Mia didn't invite you to help with the nursery," my neighbor Mrs. Henderson said when I ran into her at the grocery store. "That seems odd. You were always so close." "My daughter-in-law tried to pull that same thing," said Linda from my painting class. acting like her mother wasn't important anymore because the mother-in-law had more money. Didn't end well for anyone. Even at work, people were noticing. "You haven't mentioned the baby preparations lately," observed Dr. Garcia, one of the physicians I worked with. "Everything okay with your daughter?" I answered these questions honestly, but without drama. Mia's chosen to work primarily with her mother-in-law for the baby preparations. I'm respecting her decision. People could read between the lines, and most did. But the real shift was happening with Jake's family, and I only learned about it through my sister Carol, who'd remained friends with Jake's cousin Beth. "Beth says Cynthia is starting to panic," Carol told me during one of our weekly dinners. "Apparently she thought being the primary grandmother would be all photo opportunities and cute outfits. Now that Mia's getting closer to her due date, she's asking detailed questions about feeding schedules and sleep training and how to handle colic. Cynthia's been Googling everything because she doesn't actually remember much about taking care of newborns." The irony was rich. Cynthia had positioned herself as the expert, the one with better connections and superior knowledge. But connections don't teach you how to swaddle a baby at 3 a.m., and money doesn't prepare you for the reality of sleep deprivation and postpartum emotions. Beth also mentioned that Jake's been asking his mom about childcare, Carol continued. "Apparently, they assumed Cynthia would be available for babysitting, but she's got her country club commitments and that European cruise she's planned for next spring. She keeps saying things like, 'Well, I assumed Mia's mother would handle the day-to-day care.'" The best part of all this was that I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to point out Cynthia's limitations or highlight my own experience. I didn't have to compete or defend myself or prove my worth. I just had to wait while reality did the work for me. The woman who had replaced me was about to discover that being a grandmother on Instagram was very different from being a grandmother in real life. And Mia was about to learn the difference between having a lovely mother-in-law and having an actual mother. The call came on a Tuesday evening in early November, 6 weeks before Mia's due date. I was in my kitchen, cleaning paintbrushes after working on a watercolor of autumn leaves, when my phone rang. Mia's name on the screen made my heart skip, but I let it ring 3 times before answering. Old me would have grabbed it on the first ring, breathless with hope and anxiety. New me could wait. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, my voice calm and warm, but not desperate. "Mom." She sounded different. Tired, maybe even a little shaky. "How are you?" "I'm well, thank you. Just finished painting for the evening." "How are you feeling? You must be getting excited with the baby coming so soon." There was a pause, and I could hear her breathing on the other end. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. I know things have been weird between us lately, but I really need your help." The old me would have immediately said yes to whatever she needed, grateful just to be included again. But the new me, the one who'd spent 4 months learning to value herself, asked a different question. "What kind of help do you need, Mia?" "Well, Cynthia's been sick with some kind of stomach bug for the past week, and I'm feeling really overwhelmed. The nursery still isn't completely set up, and I have all these questions about what I actually need versus what the baby store people are trying to sell me. Plus, Jake's been working late trying to finish a big project before his paternity leave, and I just—" She trailed off, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "I was hoping maybe you could come over this weekend and help me figure things out, and maybe you could be on call when the baby comes, in case Cynthia's still not feeling well." There it was, the moment I'd been both hoping for and dreading for months. My daughter needed me again, but only because her first choice wasn't available. "Mia," I said gently, settling into a kitchen chair, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. Do you want my help because I'm your mother, and you value my experience and support? Or do you want my help because Cynthia isn't available and you need a backup plan?" The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "That's not fair," she finally whispered. "Isn't it? Sweetheart, 4 months ago, you told me I wasn't welcome at your baby shower. In front of 30 people, you made it clear that I had no place in your pregnancy journey. For months, I've watched you celebrate every milestone with Cynthia while treating me like I was bothering you by caring. And now that she's sick, you want me to step in and be the grandmother you wouldn't let me be when it was convenient for you. Mom, I'm not finished. My voice was still calm, but there was steel in it now. I love you more than my own life, Mia. I always have, and I always will. But I need to know where I actually stand in your life. I can't be your backup plan when your first choice isn't available. I can't be someone you turn to only when you're desperate. That's not fair to either of us. She was crying now. Really crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I was so scared of not being good enough for Jake's family that I made you feel like you weren't good enough for mine. That was wrong, and I'm sorry. I believe you're sorry, I said, and I meant it. But sorry isn't enough anymore. I need to know that you understand what you're asking of me. You're not just asking for help with baby preparations. You're asking me to trust you with my heart again after you broke it in the most public way possible. I know, she whispered. I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But Mom, I need you. Not as a backup plan, not because Cynthia isn't available. I need you because you're my mother, and you're the only person who really knows how to take care of me. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in months. Then we need to talk. Really talk. Not just about what you need from me, but about what I need from you. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a frigid December morning, 3 weeks before Mia's due date. Jake's voice was tight with panic when I answered the phone. Diane, we're at the hospital. Mia's in labor, but something's wrong. Her blood pressure spiked, and they're talking about an emergency C-section. She's asking for you. I was dressed and in my car within 10 minutes, my heart pounding as I navigated empty streets slick with ice. All the conversations we'd had over the past month, all the careful rebuilding of boundaries and trust, none of it mattered now. My daughter needed me, and I would move mountains to get to her. The maternity ward was controlled chaos when I arrived. I found Jake pacing in the hallway outside Mia's room, his hair disheveled, still wearing the clothes he'd thrown on when her contractions started. Where's Cynthia? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. She fainted when they started talking about emergency surgery, Jake admitted, looking embarrassed. She's in another room being treated for her own blood pressure issues. Robert's with her. Of course she had. Cynthia, who had positioned herself as the expert grandmother, the one better equipped to handle the important moments, had crumpled at the first sign of real crisis. I walked into Mia's room and saw my daughter hooked up to monitors, her face pale and drawn with pain and fear. When she saw me, she started crying. Mom, I'm scared. They said the baby's heart rate dropped, and my blood pressure won't come down, and I don't know what's happening. I moved to her bedside with the calm competence that comes from 16 years of single motherhood, from handling every crisis and emergency on my own. I took her hand and smoothed her hair back from her sweating forehead. Listen to me, sweetheart. You're going to be fine, and so is your daughter. I've been through this with you, remember? You were a stubborn little thing who didn't want to come out either. The doctors know what they're doing. Over the next 3 hours, I was the steady presence in that room while medical staff prepped Mia for surgery. I helped her through breathing exercises when the contractions intensified. I translated medical jargon when the doctors explained procedures. I held her hand and sang the lullabies I used to sing when she was little, the ones that always calmed her down. Jake watched from the corner, and I could see the realization dawning on his face. This was what experience looked like. This was what it meant to have someone who'd been through the trenches of motherhood, who didn't fall apart when things got scary. When they wheeled Mia into surgery, I was the one she looked at before they put her under. Don't leave, she whispered. I'll be right here when you wake up, I promised. Baby Lily arrived at 6:23 a.m., perfect and healthy, despite the dramatic entrance. When they brought Mia back to recovery, groggy but smiling, I was sitting in the chair beside her bed, holding her daughter. She's beautiful, I whispered, placing the baby in Mia's arms. She looks just like you did when you were born. That's when Cynthia finally appeared, looking pale and shaken, but trying to regain her composure. She bustled into the room with Robert behind her, immediately moving toward the baby. Oh, let Grandma hold her precious granddaughter, she cooed, reaching for Lily. But Mia pulled the baby closer to her chest and looked directly at me. "Mom, would you like to hold your granddaughter?" The moment was quiet but profound. In front of Jake, Cynthia, Robert, and the nursing staff, Mia had made her choice clear. I was the grandmother who had earned my place through presence, competence, and unconditional love. When I took Lily in my arms for the first time, she opened her tiny eyes and seemed to study my face with the serious expression of someone taking measure of a person. "Hello, little one," I whispered. "I'm your Grandma Diane. I've been waiting so long to meet you." Cynthia stood there awkwardly, her moment of triumph stolen by her own inability to handle the reality of what being a grandmother actually required. Justice, it turned out, wasn't about revenge. It was about truth finally revealing itself when it mattered most. A week after Lily's birth, Mia appeared at my front door on a gray December afternoon, baby carrier in one hand, diaper bag slung over her shoulder, dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and new mother overwhelm. She looked exactly like I had 28 years ago when I'd brought her home from the hospital. Exhausted, uncertain, and desperately in need of someone who knew what they were doing. "Can we come in?" she asked quietly. "I think we need to talk." I stepped aside and watched as she maneuvered through my living room with the careful movements of someone still recovering from surgery. She set the baby carrier on my coffee table and immediately began the anxious fussing that new mothers do, checking to make sure Lily was still breathing, adjusting her tiny hat, smoothing her blanket. "She's perfect," I said, settling into the chair across from them. "How are you feeling?" "Overwhelmed," Mia admitted with a shaky laugh. "I thought I was prepared, but nobody tells you how terrifying it is when you bring them home and realize you're completely responsible for keeping another human being alive." "It's the most wonderful and most frightening feeling in the world," I agreed. "I remember bringing you home and being convinced I was going to break you somehow." Mia looked up at me then, really looked at me, like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in months. "Mom, I need to say something, and I need you to let me get it all out before you respond, okay?" I nodded, settling back in my chair. I was wrong. About everything. About the baby shower, about pushing you away, about making Cynthia more important than you, about treating you like you were some kind of burden instead of the person who gave up everything to make sure I had everything. Her voice broke, and she wiped tears away with the back of her hand. "When I was in labor, scared out of my mind, the only person I wanted was you, not Cynthia with her perfect house and her country club connections. You. Because you're the one who knows how to take care of me when things fall apart. You're the one who's been doing it my whole life." She paused, looking down at sleeping Lily. I got so caught up in trying to prove I belonged in Jake's family that I forgot I already belonged somewhere. I forgot that I didn't need to earn your love because I've always had it. And I forgot that being loved by you isn't something to be embarrassed about. It's something to be grateful for. I waited, giving her the space to continue. "I know I hurt you badly. I know saying sorry doesn't fix what I did to you at that baby shower, or all the months I made you feel like you weren't important, but I'm hoping you'll give me another chance to get this right." "What does getting this right look like to you?" I asked gently. "It looks like me remembering that I have two grandmothers for Lily, but only one mom for me. It looks like me asking for your advice about baby things because I actually want your opinion, not because my first choice isn't available. It looks like me making sure my daughter grows up knowing that her Grandma Diane is someone special, someone who knows things about love and sacrifice that can't be bought with money or social connections." She leaned forward, her voice intense with conviction. "Mom, I don't want to just apologize. I want to do better. I want to be the daughter who deserves the mother you've been. I want Lily to see what it looks like when women support each other instead of competing with each other." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen in months. I saw the girl who had written those letters about protecting my place in her family. I saw the woman who understood what love actually required. "I'd like that too," I said simply. "But I need you to understand something. I will always love you, but I won't always be available to be treated as less than I am." This relationship gets rebuilt on respect, not just need. I understand, she said. And I promise you, I won't forget again. Retry. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my garden on a warm June morning, holding 8-month-old Lily while Mia naps on the blanket beside us. My granddaughter is fascinated by the flowers I've been tending since spring. Bright orange marigolds, purple petunias, and the climbing roses that have finally started to bloom along the fence. "See those roses, little one?" I whisper, shifting Lily so she can better see the delicate pink blooms. "Those took 3 years to really flourish. Some things need time and the right conditions to show you what they're capable of." Lily reaches out with her chubby hand, trying to grab at the petals, and I smile at her determination. She looks so much like Mia did at this age. The same serious dark eyes, the same expressive eyebrows that furrow when she's concentrating on something just out of reach. "Your mama's learning that too," I continue softly. "Learning that some of the most beautiful things in life require patience and the right kind of care. The past 6 months haven't been perfect. Rebuilding trust never is. There were moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. Times when Mia would defer to Cynthia's opinions before asking mine. Moments when I had to remind myself not to jump at every request for help without considering whether it was healthy for both of us. But slowly, carefully, we've been growing something new. Something based on mutual respect rather than desperate need. On appreciation rather than guilt. On choice rather than obligation." Mia stirs on the blanket and opens her eyes, squinting in the dappled sunlight filtering through the oak tree. "How long was I asleep?" "About an hour. Lily and I have been having a lovely conversation about flowers and patience." Mia sits up, smoothing her hair back, and reaches for her daughter. As I transfer Lily into her arms, I watch the easy confidence that has developed in Mia's mothering over these past months. She's nothing like the terrified new mother who showed up at my door that December afternoon. "Mom," she says, settling Lily against her shoulder, "I want to tell you something." I wait, having learned that the best conversations happen when I don't rush to fill the silence. Yesterday, at playgroup, one of the other moms was complaining about her mother-in-law, how she always has opinions about everything and makes her feel inadequate. And then she asked me how I manage having 2 grandmothers for Lily. Mia looks directly at me, her expression serious. I told her the truth. I told her that I have one grandmother who's lovely for special occasions and photo opportunities, and one grandmother who actually knows how to be a grandmother. I told her that when Lily's sick or scared or needs real comfort, there's only one person I call. She pauses, bouncing Lily gently as the baby starts to fuss. I told her that I almost lost the most important relationship in my life because I was too stupid to understand the difference between being impressive and being loved. The words hit me deeper than any apology she's ever offered, because they're not just about the past. They're about understanding, about growth, about the woman she's choosing to become. "You know what she said to me?" Mia continues. "She said she hoped her daughter would be smart enough to figure that out before it was too late." I reach over and touch Lily's soft cheek, then cover Mia's hand with mine. "The most important lesson I can teach this little girl," I say, watching my granddaughter's eyes drift closed in the afternoon warmth, "is that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, even when you've made mistakes, even when you're scared." "She's lucky to have you teaching her that," Mia says softly. "She's lucky to have us both," I correct. "Different kinds of love, different kinds of strength, but both real." As we sit in the garden together, 3 generations of women learning how to love each other better, I realize that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the refusal to let them treat you poorly. When I stopped accepting less than I deserved, Mia finally understood what she'd been taking for granted. And now, watching her with Lily, I know she'll never forget again.